Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Danielle Stackis and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations at the Robert H. Smith School of Business. We're excited that you're able to join us for today's webinar, Best Practices in Working with a Recruiter, presented by Kareemah Woodard, Director of Executive Consulting at Randstad Professionals. This webinar is part of the Smith Office of Alumni Relations Professional Development webinar series, in which we hope to provide thought-provoking and valuable content that will help alumni like you achieve your personal and professional goals. I do want to let everyone know that we did have an outage on campus of all internet and phone, so Kareemah and I are here at a local hotel, so if you hear some background music and a little bit of background noise, just please bear with us today on that. During the webinar, we encourage you to use the chat box to share any questions or comments you might have for our presenter. Please feel free to submit the questions throughout the session, and Kareemah will address them at the end of the presentation. Kareemah Woodard, a Smith School graduate from 1998, specializes in strategic resource planning and business development at Randstad Professionals. Her career includes a background in analytics and business system development to optimize marketing and sales processes and guide strategic planning. She has also served in internal audit and advisory capacities, developing strategies to monitor key business areas and risks associated with operational effectiveness, compliance, and financial impact. Now we will get started. Kareemah, take it away.
Thank you, Danielle. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. This background music is actually pretty awesome. I am a bass guitarist and a drummer too, so I didn't bring my instruments for you guys today. But I hope nonetheless, you'll have an opportunity to get some good value from what I'm going to share, but also equally and importantly, I want to hear from you questions that we'll have you entertain at the end today. So the topic is called Best Practices in working with a recruiter. But, a lot of when you're working with a recruiter, it's a very dynamic relationship, as we'll talk further. Just a little bit about my organization. Randstad, our goal is to help smart people find great jobs, and that's at all levels. That's from the C-suite all the way down to highly operational roles. We serve many industries, many disciplines. Our team members, which include a very, very talented team of recruiters and business developers, we are very passionate about what we do for our clients and our candidates alike. We are not only a global firm, but we have a national presence here through Randstad USA, in which we're very much a local partner to organizations and companies. I am located here in the Washington, D.C. market, which includes Vienna and Rockville. And through that, we serve many organizations and companies for staffing needs at all levels. So I will get right into it. Why use a recruiter? Are you looking to expand your network of job leads or meet prospective employers? Do you need assistance in being able to communicate your career aspirations and what you'd like to do? Those are some key questions to ask yourself, because the fact that you need a job or need new employment doesn't necessarily require you to immediately pick up the phone and dial a recruiter. My recommendations are always to be very thoughtful about not only the job search process, but just the career planning process overall. Looking for a new role is a part of a bigger picture. It's a part of your overall career plan. And some of the things that a recruiter can help you with in that larger career plan is to provide insights into the job market, help you identify those career opportunities that maybe you're not aware of. Um, in the DC area, in particular, in which I serve, many individuals are well linked and connected to many professionals through their alumni associations, through their business organizations, through friendships. But sometimes working with a third party that does this all day, every day, can give you some different insights that maybe you weren't aware of. Another thing that recruiters can provide some insights on would be, navigating through those discussions around compensation, benefits, and other aspects of salary that maybe either you're not aware of, you're not fully comfortable with, or you'd like a third party to act as an intermediary, or even just someone to bounce off some ideas and questions with. Recruiters can also be very constructive in terms of the tools that you're using to present yourself. That includes your resume, that could include your profile, which may show up on social media, such as outlets like LinkedIn. I will tell you, as a recruiter, LinkedIn is a very critical aspect of your perception and your ultimate profile that organizations are looking at when they seek you out for employment, or they work with organizations like mine to find talent. Making sure that your resume is fairly consistent with your LinkedIn profile is one key area that is often overlooked but is very important. And things like that, tips like that are some of the value added pieces of working with the recruiter that we can help you with. So one thing I will ask to get you guys feedback on is, how many of you all have actually worked with a recruiter? And you can just answer that question by quickly selecting yes or no. Okay, so it looks like a fairly decent amount of you have used recruiters, which is a good thing. But also a significant number of you have not used a recruiter, and so I would love to answer any questions for you today. But of course, follow up with you in more detail about some effective ways that we can work with you and help you with your search. So, in addition to using a recruiter, I want to share with you some real life scenarios because honestly, that's going to be important for you. What's happened that might impact my own search, and I'll give you a few examples in which individuals in certain aspects of their search have come to a recruiter. So one example is a finance executive that I've worked with. He had a background in healthcare. He was downsized in a reorganization with his company, and his position was ultimately eliminated. But with the help of a recruiting firm, mine, we were able to help this executive find a role that started out as consulting to hire. You'll also hear the phrase temp to hire as well. I just want to point that out. And what he did for this organization was he provided some support in developing budget templates, providing analysis, providing some templates to improve their reporting for forecasting. He did such a great job. This finance executive was ultimately hired as a senior level manager in the organization. And those are the kind of things that recruiters can bring to light. They can help you network with organizations that have immediate needs, go through some screening processes to evaluate your talent, really have a good understanding of the client's business, and match you up with an opportunity that might actually become something long term and really a critical point in your career. Another example that I just want to briefly share with you is we had a CPA working in different consulting firms throughout her career. She realized that although public accounting was a really great experience for her, she wanted to move into what I would describe more so financial operations. So after working with her recruiter, she was able to express her career goals, um, definitely, acknowledge her background that she was very proud of and gave her some critical skills. But she also was very candid with us in her desire to move into something a little more operational. So what we did was we presented her resume and background in such a way that um, definitely did not ignore the public accounting experience, but really played up opportunities where she worked, say, for example, with um, budget and forecasting teams to understand their business processes and the internal controls around it. Her experience in working with sales and business development teams to understand the revenue generation processes and risk around that. And so with that, she was able to find a position with one of our clients where she was able to still use that finance and accounting background, but grow in her career, take on some leadership roles over other operational areas of the organization, like HR, admin, information technology, and other operational groups. So those are just two brief, but real life examples of how having another person in your corner um, really walk you through the process of looking for a position can actually be successful and helpful for you. So a big part of maybe what you heard in those examples uh, surrounds around communication. Um, And one thing that really makes the relationship and working with a recruiter um, fruitful and effective is really showing the recruiter and more importantly to yourself that you're actually ready to be recruited. You're actually ready to move on to the next level in your career, or you're actually ready to move on to a new position. I would say as a job seeker, being very honest in what you're looking for and assessing your objectives, looking at your inventory of skills. And that's a very honest type of discussion that has to happen initially with yourself. It's taking stock of these are my skills, this is what I have, and then the potential for what you can actually offer in the future. With those transferable skills that you're looking to gain, think about how you can place that in the new world of an employer. That example that I gave you, and excuse the background noise, but I just want to put you on hold just for a quick second. Um, those those transferable skills are definitely ways where we can show an employer, I did this, but now I can move on to this. Changing your thought process about career development. I know there was a time where individuals would call up a recruiter and kind of feel like the ball was in their court. I have to wait for the recruiter to call me back. I have to wait for a job lead to be presented to me. When really career development is very iterative, it's dynamic, it never ends. We all should be looking at our resumes, looking at our skill set, identifying industries, identifying positions of interest that we might be a fit for down the road. Another thing that is key in terms of working with a recruiter is letting that partner know, and a recruiter indeed is going to be your partner, is, where do you see yourself? Um, Beyond looking for an immediate job, 5, 10 years down the road, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself aspiring to the C-suite? Do you ultimately want to become an entrepreneur? That might play a critical role in the types of positions that you look for. Um, we also want to make sure that we're open in terms of what we ultimately want from an immediate position that recruiter might focus his or her time on finding for you. And so before we get more into a dialogue, I really want to share with you 5 best practices that I've identified in my personal experience as a recruiter. Um, what I will say that may not be written on this slide, but I love giving this advice to candidates is that as the job seeker, um, imagine yourself as the CEO of an organization. And as that CEO, you're going to have advisors. You know, you'll have, in essence, what might be called your board of directors. Um, if you have 5 people working for you, and when I say working for you, working in the best interest of your career goals, um, you can view those individuals as people, as partners, to help to get you where you want to be in that next job, in that next career move. Um, what it doesn't mean is that you relinquish control of the process. As a job seeker, you will always own the process. You never have to take advice that you don't feel is suitable for you and not suitable for your career goals. So, with that said, one of the first things you want to do as you identify a recruiter to work with is thinking about your career objectives and conveying those career goals to the recruiter. That's going to help the recruiter find the right type of position, even the right industry that's going to work for you, um, and help you to put it in manageable pieces of ways to strategize and identify employment opportunities. In that example that I gave earlier, an individual could have a wealth of experience. For example, my CPA, she had a wealth of experience in public accounting and was, you know, a very technical accountant and an excellent auditor. But that was not what she wanted for her next role. And so that's something that she really had to respectfully but clearly convey to her recruiter. Because one of the first things you might imagine that is going to happen is, well, this person has a wealth of experience in this area. Oh, they immediately want to be, say, for example, an auditor again or go back into public accounting. And so it's respectfully defining your career objectives and really mapping them out when you have that first face-to-face discussion with a recruiter. Another tip that I would advise upon is identifying the type of recruiter that will best suit your needs. Um, I like to say I work for a company where we have great team orientation. We work extremely well with our clients. We have great relationships with our clients, and we have very, very positive and effective relationships with our candidates. So think about what you need as a candidate. If you need sort of a higher touch relationship, being able to communicate with them, being able to ask questions, um, being able to share ideas on how you want to be represented, then that's the type of recruiter that you will need to look for. If you're looking for someone that is also able and willing to maybe shape a little bit of your career objectives and advice, then that is exactly what you should take the time to seek out. And the best way to do that is when you have your initial meeting with the recruiter. Feel free to ask that recruiter questions. Ask them about the types of roles they focus on. Do they focus on placement for direct hire, or do they focus on placement for consulting? Is it a mixture of both? Is your recruiter well versed in a certain industry? I have to say that we have very tenured recruiters in our office that I have the pleasure of working with. And some of them have sort of developed niches and specialties in certain markets and industries. So that's also something that I think should consider. Be prepared to discuss your experience, your skill set, and the type of role you're seeking. You'd be a little surprised, but there are some individuals that may not know fully what's on their resume. Knowing what's on your resume is pretty important because that is the document that a potential hiring manager or decision maker will review. When they review that resume, they may not have seen you, they may not know you, they may, have done a little research maybe on LinkedIn to see who you are. But that resume is important in being able for them to kind of see that first picture of you. So you want to be able to candidly and effectively share your experience with your recruiter. Your recruiter is going to act as almost a liaison between you and the hiring manager / decision maker. So the more confident that you are able to make your recruiter feel that you are confident in your experience, in your skill set, your competencies, and what you're looking for, I think the easier it's going to be for that recruiter to advocate for you for a particular role, or even I think that you're a good fit for a position that they may be recruiting for their client. Another area that we've touched upon already is just being open and honest about where you are in your search and being proactive about staying in touch, letting recruiters know if you are applying for roles and positions on your own, you can be very candid about that. In fact, it's in your best interest to be candid with a recruiter because oftentimes a recruiting firm may have contacts with organizations that you're applying for on your own, and you may not be aware. That may lead to a networking opportunity for that recruiter to share your background and get you further connected. If you change course in what you want and what you're looking for in a role, and you're changing your mind about leaving your role because of different reasons, that's something that your recruiter, should know and will want to know. It will drive what I would call the pace of the search. There's nothing wrong with being a passive job seeker, testing the water, seeing what's out there. But if you're conveying something more exigent in terms of your need to leave a position, but it's really not the case, then it may be a waste of time on both parties' sides. So just keep open lines, be upfront about where you are in your search and what you want, and feel free to stay in touch with recruiters. Recruiters, like everyone, have busy responsibilities. It's a very dynamic job. You may start your day out recruiting for a role, and then by the end of the day, you're called in to do some business development for a client who has a hard to find need. So have some patience, of course, but also be very confident about having a good communication process in place with the recruiter. We use email, we use phone. Figure out what works best. What will get you the best response, and really just being able to touch base, if anything. And lastly, but so importantly, is making sure that your communications are professional and effective. And I know I've used the word effective a lot in this short period of time, But I think anytime you're speaking to another human being, the goal is to make sure what you're conveying is heard and understood. Um, Working with a recruiter, again, is a dynamic process. And when you're looking for a job, sometimes there are other things going on. There might be professional and personal frustrations that's causing the need for the job search, and therefore it might create a sense of urgency, and sometimes our just sort of our professionalism is tested in the midst of frustration. But remembering that the recruiter is your partner, they are a part of that sort of what I described as board of directors. That they are advocating for you, and trust and believe a recruiter will want to place you. So, it's always in your best interest to want to always look at that recruiter as a partner in your search and maintaining the highest level of professionalism that you can with them. So ultimately, your end goal is met, is finding that career opportunity that suits your needs and suits what you're looking for. So before we go into to our questions and any feedback that you might have to find out better how to work with a recruiter, is I just really want to share this takeaway with you, is when you're working with a recruiter, don't relinquish the thought of having that person map out your career goals. It's very important to really to think critically about what you want for your career. Do not be afraid to enlist help of professionals that also do this. I myself have worked with career coaches throughout my career, through graduate school, and even as early as an undergraduate. I was never shy about asking for career advice, and that's one of the things that has led me into the career of recruiting and development, and that's always being ready to take the next step in one's career. And if you do decide to work with a recruiter, really think about that mental model of having that recruiter be one of your board members, someone that's advising you in the strategy of you and working with you to meet your goals, and you always keeping in mind that you'll be um, ultimately responsible for your career development, and also making sure that the recruiter is an accountable partner in all of that. And as we mentioned earlier today, that I will definitely not be doing all the talking. I really want to hear from you all. I want to get some questions, any thoughts that you may have on working with a recruiter, and of course, any way that I may be able to directly support you in your needs.
All right, so thank you so much, Kareemah. As she mentioned, we'll go ahead and take some time for questions right now. Just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. And the first question we have here is, I decided to leave my role as a senior marketing manager to be a stay-at-home mom for the past 2 years. Could you touch on working with a recruiter when you have a gap year or two? What do you recommend for someone in my position?
That is an excellent question. Um, I see it all the time, and individuals leave the workforce for various reasons. Um, what I will say, if indeed there were activities that you were involved in that may not have, say, for example, have been paid, or they may have been volunteer based, I always tell candidates, if they're relevant, to note that on there. Um, if indeed your time has been spent with caring for a child. We also have candidates that have had to leave the workforce for a year or two to care for an aging loved one or another medical leave situation. Is to note in the appropriate discussion points in which that will be relevant. I have seen resumes where it has been noted on there. I can't necessarily say that that is the right or wrong approach, but I will say this: when you are working with a recruiter, part of that relationship is having that recruiter act as a third party, um, really a partner, to facilitate discussions and questions between yourself and an employer. And so I would say it's on a case by case basis in which you would disclose, say, for example, that level of information on a resume. But I will say I would work very closely with the recruiter to, again, on a case by case basis, decide the best way in which you want to convey that information.
Great. Another question here is, what's the best way to go about first finding and, oh, we had a couple more questions come in there while I was saying that. Okay, what's the best way to go about first finding and second approaching a recruiter? Do you typically prefer to find partners or do you mind being sought out?
Well, I always like for people to reach out to me if they see me on social media, and if they see something about my personal style or my background that works for them. I'm always open for it. But in general, kind of like when you're looking for a new home or a car, or you want recommendations for a new restaurant, I'm always going to my trusted network for a word of mouth recommendation. Um, I personally, when I was in finance and accounting, when I worked as an auditor, and I used recruiters, I would go to my colleagues and ask them, well, who'd you work with? What recruiter did, what firm did you work with to find that job, or how did you meet them? And so that's another great way to find a recruiter. Of course, if you're interested in using Randstad, we are definitely accessible, easy to find, www.randstad.com. And on that site, you can definitely determine what location works best for you and get connected to a recruiting team. But I would say just identifying, word of mouth recommendations from your network who's had great experiences with a given recruiter is probably the best way to start.
Great. Another more questions coming in. When it comes to highly specialized and highly paid positions, many recruiters don't have enough domain-specific knowledge to really find and match applicants with positions. Oh, this is more of a comment. And instead they just match words, but this often doesn't work at all. She'll respond.
Well, I'm definitely happy to address that, and I can understand the frustration of, or just the observation of maybe a recruiter not having the specialty knowledge in a given area, a very technical area or a complex area. And I will say that it's always going to be the recruiter's job to understand the client's business and the need. And so, one thing that I think kind of alleviates maybe candidates feeling like the recruiter doesn't know what I do and therefore can't sell me properly to a client is really making sure that your skill set and your ability to perform for a given role, whether it's a consulting job or a direct hire position, is very clear and evident. And just being upfront and asking the recruiter, do you feel like I'm a good match for this position? I think that will give you really good insight whether that recruiter, one, understands the position that they are recruiting for, and two, understands your background well enough to make sure that they're conveying all of the appropriate information to a given client or organization. I hope that helps.
Okay, another question here. If I am looking to make a career move 2 years in the future, is it too early to start talking to a recruiter now?
That's actually a good point. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think there's ever any time that's too early to think about a career move that you know you will want to have in the future. 2 years, honestly, is really not that far away. What I would say an appropriate discussion for a recruiter at that point is really asking for one, an introduction, asking for an introduction about their firm, their company. What kind of organization is it? How large is it? How many how many recruiters do you have in your office? Do you have a specialty that you focus on, or are your recruiting efforts pretty much across the board in terms of serving industries? Do you focus on only high level positions? Do you focus on mid-career? Do you have a niche? What is the job market like for, say, for example, a senior accountant with public accounting experience? I don't think that it's ever too early to start fact finding for what you deem as a career move that's down the road. And it's never too early to establish a relationship with someone that you think you'll need in about 12 months or so. So no, I think just maybe getting an introduction to the firm and the type of recruiters might be the first step in that introductory discussion before you begin a very active job search.
All right, another one here. I'm a mid-career candidate, currently out of work and looking to get back into a similar role to what I was previously doing, a financial analyst. A few times I've reached out to recruiters, they have ignored my request from the start, as in I don't even receive a response to my initial email inquiry. Is there a better way to seek out a recruiter?
Well, if you don't feel like you're getting feedback from a recruiter, then there might be a couple of things, and I don't know your particular situation, but this is just going to be blanket advice I give for anyone that's looking for a job. Making sure that the information on your resume is relevant and speaks to the types of positions that you're looking for. Making sure that the content in your resume is understood and is something that can be communicated initially to the recruiting team and then ultimately to a client. Making sure that your contact information, and I know that kind of goes without saying, but making sure all of your contact information is available and you can be reached. Making sure that honestly, the recruiting firm that you're reaching out to is the best type of recruiter for the types of roles you're looking for. If you're reaching out to a recruiting firm that focuses primarily on, and I'm using just this purely as an example, for office and administration roles, and maybe financial analyst roles are something that they maybe do as a secondary focus, then sometimes it may be harder to get the feedback and response. So again, to my earlier point, making sure that hopefully you're working with the firms that will have a close attention and focus on the types of roles you're looking for, that might help. I'm more than happy to talk with you more offline about your experiences and maybe also give you some additional personal suggestions. I'm going to make sure that I provide my contact information too at the end of the webinar. So I'm more than happy to follow with you to help you out, though. Thank you.
Okay, so for someone who sort of fell into a position, doesn't appear to have a clear career path or a defined set of skills, where should they start, I guess, in the process, or before they come to a recruiter? what are some of the things that they should be exploring?
Well, I love that question because that personally resonates with me. If you were to look at my LinkedIn profile, I get the question all the time: how did you end up here as a recruiter? And if you look at my experience and map it out, if you take a really close look, you can kind of say, yeah, I can see how she got there. Um, and so what I also tell my candidates is, particularly candidates who are looking to move into different either aspects of an industry they're in, or maybe move around in different areas of a discipline that they've been working in for years, is to first look at your transferable skills. Take an inventory of just your skill set, regardless of your title, regardless of the industry you work in. What can you do? And these transferable skills that you can begin to map out. I'm a former auditor, so I love matrices, and that's what I personally use for myself when I'm literally mapping out, what my next career um, uh, opportunity will be. Is what can I do? Do I have supervisory skills? Do I have analytical skills? Do I have leadership skills? Do I have skills in uh, coalition building? Do I have, and to take it down a further level, if you are a finance professional, do you have reconciliation skills? Do you have skills in month-end close? If you are a financial analyst, have you done any mapping uh, in terms of evaluating forecasts? Have you prepared a budget? If you are in HR, do you have recruiting skills? Do you have experience with compensation and analysis? So it's really looking at your resume and pulling out what are the skills. And then after you pull out the skills, what you want to do is determine, of these skills, which ones are transferable to the roles that ultimately I'd like to be considered for. I'm more than happy to talk with you offline in a little more detail, in just some ways that I've done that for myself and help candidates do that as well. So, but that's a very relevant question, and I think that's a question that all job seekers, whether they're looking for a purely lateral role, similar position, similar type of work, or they're looking to move into a new career path. I think that's a very valid question that you should always ask yourself.
All right, and our last question here, when you're an entrepreneur and you don't work for an employer and are not paid, how is this viewed? Are employers viewing them as someone who would rather work for themselves than necessarily maybe working for someone else? Any advice you have on that?
So that's a really good observation. You as the candidate looking at yourself and asking, wow, how does this employer perceive me? I think that's a very thoughtful approach. And to directly answer your question, I think there are a couple of vantage points. As an entrepreneur, you're going to come with a set of skills. And again, going back to the earlier question, transferable skills that can be unique and actually can be to your advantage. Entrepreneurs wear many hats, and depending on the type of business they have, they are everything from the CEO to the CFO to the office manager to the janitor to the secretary to the admin to everything. And so as an entrepreneur, if you're able to express your transferable skills to an employer, I think the perception is around, really, is this person manageable because they may be considered, quote unquote, too independent. I think that becomes less of an issue and more of the, I guess more of the time is spent on, wow, although this person has worked in entrepreneurial settings. They may have owned their own business. Um, they may even still have a side business while working for me. Can this person commit to help me meet my business objectives? And I think as long as your your resume, your profile, and ultimately your connection with the potential employer speaks to that, I think it alleviates the concern about maybe being seen as unmanageable or too independent. So I hope that helps. And again, I'm also happy to talk with you offline on any additional questions you have too. And so, but before we wind down today, I just want to remind you that again, there are many recruiting firms in our area, and many of them also have a national and global presence. I just want to remind you that at Randstad Professionals, specifically the organization that I work for, we are a full stop shop. We are placing individuals in direct hire capacities, and we also provide staffing support as well. So staffing and temporary placement for organizations that need immediate and critical assistance. And then lastly, executive consulting, which is the area of focus that I personally work in. We help C-suite executives and other high-level decision makers with those business projects, those strategic initiatives in which they need a subject matter expert or they need high-level support or on an interim basis. So we really are a full-stop shop. We have a group of recruiters and team members that are always willing to provide that insight to help you get to the next step. And my information is listed here. At any time where you have inquiries, you have questions, you want to understand what's going on in the market, I definitely want to make sure that I can help you with that and also get you connected to maybe other specialists on our team as well. So I've listed my phone number at 202-800-7903, and also feel free to email me, and I really look forward to further my introductions to you all. It's really great to provide this opportunity to Smith alumni. I love coming back home to share any insights that I can help my fellow Smith alum with, and I really, really appreciate your time and attention today. The questions were awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you again at our next webinar, Beyond CSR, 5 Principles for Better Business, happening on Wednesday, June 13th at noon Eastern Time. A recording of today's webinar will be emailed and posted to the Smith School Alumni website. We hope you have a wonderful day, and go Terps!